and like super, super, super obsessive. And then actually in my neuroscience course, or I was I was sort of studying music in the brain. And we actually had a class where we had to learn Logic and like make a song overnight and bring a song to class the next day to prove we'd like learned the audio recording software. And that's when I kind of started making music, because I like yeah, the class provided free audio software, and then I just sort of like went down the rabbit hole.
Whoa, that is wild. Yeah. So what year in college is that? How old are you?
That would have probably been 2009 or 2010.
That is wild.
Yeah. And then I basically the first music I made kind of went viral, which was both a blessing and a curse, because like there's a lot of footage of me like literally learning how to make music. I've been making music for less than a year, and I'm like on stage and stuff. There's some pretty awkward video of me like being like, I accidentally turned the SP404 off. Sorry guys. And people, but so.
Well, certainly at that point, your career starts taking off, and you end up making a career move, which anyone would have in your position. I think the most fascinating thing about your music is that it really feels like you're transported to another world. Like have you actually listened to my music? I have actually listened to your music, but I will confess to you, Grimes, that like if I just listen to your music, I feel like I'm not getting the right experience. Like I feel like I have to be watching the video in order to be, like, I'm not sure how many of your fans feel the same way, but I mean, I kind of feel that way. So I don't know. I'm glad you feel that way. I think, yeah, because you're such a visual artist, and there are such striking visuals. Again, you feel transported to another world for like a lot of your videos and songs, and so I feel like they all go together in a way that makes them more complete. Like if I'm just listening to the music in a car or whatnot, like I just feel like, let me wait until I can be someplace and like watch the video on my phone. I mean I don't know if that's everyone's attitude, but for whatever reason, that's the way I've experienced your music. I mean, I'm usually thinking of videos, like almost all my best songs. I was like, ooh, imagine if imagine a scene or something. Because I direct a lot of the videos myself, or co-direct them with my brother, and then kind of make the song around that. So it is, I think, core to the music. And speaking of the Canadian government, part of the reason I was able to even do that in the first place, like being super small and on an indie label, was the Canadian grant system, which America is maybe too big to have art grants. I don't know, but that's another thing that I super appreciate about being born. I didn't know this, but what an incredible story. You're like the product of the public education system, and then you had some kind of art grants to make some of your first videos that helped launch you. So there are programs like that in the United States, but not in the way you're describing, I don't believe. Like anyone who's an artist listening to this is like, I haven't seen an art grant in my life in the United States. The people who are saying that are generally correct. There is a national endowment for the arts, but it would not go to an independent musician that's trying to make a video. Like it might go to a museum or an art display. Not that there's anything wrong with those things. But that's an incredible story of the government coming through. I know that's why I'm like, I mean, if you look at the American music in general, like so many of the artists are Canadian or Swedish or whatever, like I do think you can like see a direct correlation between the grant system and public funding for the arts, and like I don't know, whatever the Weeknd, Bieber, it's Drake, yes. Yeah. I was just at Saturday Night Live, and I was hanging out with Jim Carrey, and it just struck me that he's another super Canadian who like came down and took over showbiz. So it's true, like the Canadian influence is very strong everywhere. One of the things that I found out when I was running this entrepreneurship organization, Venture for America, was that artists have the same impact on a community's economic development as entrepreneurs. Like if a bunch of artists move to a community and then you wait X years, that community will end up having economic growth, new businesses, revitalization in the same way as if a group of entrepreneurs went. And this is a major problem for the United States, because in the United States, arts are treated not as an economic driver, but as something of a luxury or frivolity, in part because of what you're describing, where you show up to college and then anyone who says they're going to study art or music would be like, are you out of your minds? And, people get funneled towards, quote unquote, these more practical things. When in truth, and you and I talk about this, like in the future, we have to be investing much more energy in arts and creativity, because AI and technology are going to do a lot of like the bookkeeping and accounting and like the practical stuff that people feel like is a safer career. I mean, a lot of this stuff is going to change pretty quickly.
Yeah. Although I do actually think, like, at least music is democratizing really fast, in part due to the tech companies, like, GarageBand being free on an Apple computer or whatever. I actually, like, I think you can actually record, like, I think like Billie Eilish said she recorded her album in her house or whatever. Like it is, the technology is kind of getting to a place where I think it's just getting a lot more democratic. Like it used to be that you needed to be just really fucking rich or on like a label that's going to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make an album. And I think it's interesting because you're just seeing the amount of artists making music ballooning right now, which is cool. But then it's its own drama. Because I was actually just talking to Daniel Ek, who runs Spotify, and they're like, there's 7 million artists on Spotify or whatever. And like they feel like they can like maybe make it so that like 1 million artists can make a living off music, which is still
not 7 million. Yeah.
Not 7 million. And probably it's going to like double. Like there's probably going to be more than 7 million. But I don't know. Like, I wonder, I mean, I know you're really into like UBI and stuff. Like, I wonder if there's ways to, like, if everything is automated, like if there's sort of AI and machines kind of like doing almost every sort of menial job or whatever, like, is there a world in which if companies aren't paying employees, they can be taxed more, like, because of all the extra, in theory, all the extra revenue they'd be making while not having to pay, but not having and like, could that be like, I don't know. I'm actually curious about like UBI. Like I haven't read that much about it. Like I'm not like I don't know what the specifics would be, like how it would be accomplished or whatever.
I'm really passionate about a lot of elements of this, where right now, so, and you know this much better than I do, and you're like an ultra successful popular artist, but a lot of artists are dependent upon actually performing live and touring in order to make money, make a living. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even me, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. For you too. I mean, like you understand this better than I would, but the digital royalties from like a Spotify are really pretty minimal, even for folks who are getting tons and tons of downloads and views. Like I forget what the math is, but it's something like I don't know, like a tenth of a penny or something ridiculous. Yeah. Like maybe you get a few cents. And so there are artists who might get millions of downloads who are struggling to get by. Because,
it's actually, it's pretty insane. I mean, I wouldn't say it's just an issue with the streaming services. I think the labels are a huge part of this too. I mean, in music, there's just a lot of middlemen. Like, once you have like, business management, lawyer, manager, booking agent, label. Personally, I think labels pay too much, but at the same time, a label can also throw a lot of money down on an artist and it can fail. So it's like, I'm not really sure what the solution is, but the situation in music worries me. Like I know artists that are pretty successful that are like broke.
And that's not right. Yeah. Like these are folks who are
like people with millions of plays. Like they're like popular artists. Like, so it's yeah. I feel like we need to sort of like do something about the middleman situation, but then I don't.
There is a cost structure where you have an industry that came of age in a time when there was a lot more money flowing through. Because I'm old enough to remember going to Tower Records and like the CD stores and whatnot. That they were like buying this $12. A lot of times you were buying an album for like 1 or 2 good songs too. It was like, that was like the way it was packaged. So you do have some legacy costs. Another big problem, though, is that we've conditioned consumers to pay one streaming fee, and that's it. You know what I mean? It's like, if I paid for Spotify, then I want all my music for free. And then the only way you can get more money out of them is to show up in their town and perform, which is okay. I mean, now it's not okay because no one can perform. But I think that there's so one of the solutions I had. And you can imagine this as like universal basic income. So universal basic income is the government giving everyone money. And if we did that, then musicians would make more music and they wouldn't be starving to death, and people would have more money to patronize them and support them. But I think the move we have to make is something where we empower consumers to pay artists directly just by virtue of listening to them or having their attention. Like, every American has like 100 music bucks or media bucks that they have in any given month. And by virtue of them listening to you, you actually get maybe whatever the streaming, like, pennies are, but you get like a micro fraction of that person's music bucks for that month times all of the folks that listen to it. And then all of a sudden the money that goes to these 7 million artists in Spotify like goes up significantly. This is like a revved up version of these public grants you're talking about, where instead of giving it to the artist, we give it to the consumer, so that when the consumer listens to a musician or supports a musician, then the musician gets rewarded. Like, you would need some kind of system like that, which is actually very doable. Like, it's much more doable now than it would have been at another time.
Yeah, or even, I was listening to a podcast. Do you know the Revolutions podcast, Mike Duncan?
I don't listen to it, but I've heard of it.
It's an incredible podcast. But it's like he seems so like stressed. It's always just, and like Harry's razors and all this. And I'm like, why can't there just be a donate $1? Like, why can't I just buy it?
Just donate the $1. And like watching artists scramble for this stuff too, and be like, hey, support me on Patreon, support me on this and that. It's like, it's like, if I enjoy your stuff, you should just be getting value from me.
I just feel like every single streaming service, like even like YouTube or whatever, Spotify, there should just be a little thing at the side of like the song or the podcast or the video. And it's like, I just want to donate $1 to this. Because another thing that I was thinking about a lot is music videos, for example. And I know you wanted to talk about K-pop, which I think is sort of, anyway, so like the music video masterclass at the moment. But
they've taken it to a whole other level. It actually reminds me of your stuff, where it's very transporting, but go on.
But it's like, so music videos, there isn't a direct you don't directly profit from a music video. You like pay for a music video and you just like hope to God like it makes the song take off or whatever, and that you can like earn the money back on the video. And like, I think it's kind of sad, because it's like, I feel like the art of music videos would be respected more if like you could pay for them in an easier way. Like, when I see a fucking fantastic music video, I'm like, damn, like, why can't I just give them $2 or $5? Like,
there are so many problems that are tied into this. But one problem is that our attention is being monetized in various ways. We're conditioned not to pay, but then we pay this hidden price because you're selling ads and you're selling my data and you're doing all this stuff. Like, particularly in the social media world. I mean, a lot of this music we're talking about is on YouTube. Like, freaking, YouTube tries to monetize us through ads, and they've got very effective algorithms and rabbit holes. And some of that stuff's not great. Like, there's a joke that you're always 3 clicks away from a conspiracy theory on YouTube. Like you'll start out watching a video, then you'll wind up, watching some crazy video about pizzerias or whatever.
I don't know if this is like a proposed idea, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Like, I feel like under capitalism, like, we value things that we pay for more than things that we don't pay for. And, like, do you ever get into like the am I the asshole page on Reddit? It's like a page where people like they come and they like say they're like, okay, am I the asshole? And they like say their situation. And like, there's so many of them with like, like a stay-at-home mom, like, where the husband or whatever is just like you're the stay-at-home mom, it's an easy life, like blah 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 blah, like everything is paid for, like chill, like you're not allowed to complain. And I really started thinking about the fact that motherhood isn't compensated. And it's this weird thing.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like, motherhood is the hardest thing in the world. And everyone treats it like it's
so hard.
It's not. It's brutal.
It's way harder than a regular job. Like, as a person, like, I thought I was like a hard ass, like touring and, just like it, when you're just like alone with a baby for 24 hours, like you can barely go to the bathroom. Like it's crazy. Like there aren't other jobs where it's just like going to the bathroom could just be like a huge problem. And like, you know, like sometimes you're just holding a baby in your arms crying and you're like, I just need to pee. Like, you know, it's like a really intensive job. And I feel like our society super undervalues it. And, you know, it's actually one of the most important jobs. Like it's like raising the next generation.
What does Canada do for new moms? Because Canada has paid leave and whatnot. The U.S. is the most pathologically anti-woman and anti-family. And when Evelyn had our first son, Christopher, it was so difficult for both of us, but primarily for her, because when you're the dad, the baby doesn't care about you. You know, like the baby's homed in on mom and food.
Yeah.
And like the dad, like, you know, I was in the way a lot of the time. But seeing what Evelyn went through and then trying to help and being, you know, not, you know, like as much help as I wanted to be, it's so educational, like, because I saw what Evelyn was going through, where like the baby needed her 24/7. The baby did not sleep more than, you know, what I forget what the rhythm was, but
hours,
like slept an hour, and half the time, even when it was sleeping on top of her, and so, you know, she was like kind of half asleep, the baby, and so she was just getting it was so punishing. And imagining a single mom going through that really broke my heart. It's actually why I ran for president, because I was cocky going into it. I was like, there are two of us and we're, you know, like we have resources and the rest of it, and like it should be fine. And then it was like a bomb went off in our house, and like we both were losing our minds for months. And I just couldn't imagine someone going through it alone.
You know, that's the main thing. Like 2 or 3 days in, I suddenly had this insane empathy and like deep concern for single mothers. Like I was just like, oh, holy fuck, this would be like really, really bad if you were doing this on your own. And like, I think it actually might be, you know, people say single mom and this and that, but it like, that's like a really fucked up thing, I think. And I don't think as a society, like we're considering that nearly
not enough at all.
Because it's like, yeah, the level of brutality there is like crazy.
If you, going through it alone as a single mom, and right now 40% of American children are born to unmarried moms, you know, and then some of
really,
so some of them, it looks like they're two parents in the homes, they happen not to be married, but in many of them, it's just a mom. Like it's the new normal, really, in the U.S. And it breaks my heart, because like now I regard every single mom as a superwoman, superhuman. About 90% of single parents are single moms too. So when you think single parent, you're like, there are single dads out there, but they're outnumbered by single moms, like 9 to 1.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any single dad too. I mean, if you're in the same boat, really. So, but I just like, I don't even know how you would have a job and have a baby and like not have another person. Like I literally can't, like, what would you do? Like,
what would you do?
Yeah.
I totally agree. Like it's unfathomable.
It's pretty scary.
So we're talking about it now, but how is is it X-A12? Like, how did I pronounce that right? Or
I say XAI Archangel, but there's great dispute, I think, around the world and in my house, because I don't know. His name is Malleable. I don't want to talk about him too much because I'm like really in the like wanting to de-celebritize him. I guess I really got in my own world. I didn't think his name would be that big of a meme. So like when it became like a giant meme, I was like, oh, like I already fucked my kid. And it's like,
no, don't worry about it. He's got plenty of time to become aware. Trust me, I've got 2 boys and they don't know what the heck is going on even now. And they're like, 5 years older than him. So you're fine. Don't worry about it.
I feel like it's like a consent thing. Like a baby can't consent to being like famous or whatever. So I'm like very cognizant of, trying to keep his life normal and not have him be like a celebrity baby or whatever.
Does he have the beginnings of a personality? Like, is he doing his thing?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's what's crazy. Like, personality seems almost there from day 1, more like day 20. But
Well, one of the things that happens when you're a parent, you'll probably agree with this, I think, is that before you have children and you get this like nature versus nurture debate, you think like, oh, it's like they're both really important, it's like 50-50, and then after you have kids you're like nature.
Yeah, no, totally. Like yeah, like he was smiling and like reacting to the helicopters and stuff like weeks before he was responding to people, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's obsessed with aircraft. This seems like
Chip off the old block.
Yeah. So yeah, no, but it's I mean, because his personality's fully like he has his vibe and it's just there. Like I don't think we could change it. Like he enjoys what he enjoys. He literally has taste. There's music he hates. Like there's music he loves. Like it's just like fully set. I'm sure you could like. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Well, I have the same experience where like our boys are very, very specific, and that has nothing to do with anything we did. Like so parents think it's more nature than nurture, and apparently science agrees. Apparently science says there's a lot of.
Does agree?
Yeah, science does agree. It's a bit more nature than nurture. So it's not our imagination.
Andrew and I want to talk to you about something called Noom, which is basically a psychology-focused way to lose weight, get healthy.
Music, maybe not all the time because everyone needs a break, but like I feel like that must be an important part of your work.
Yeah, no, I think it's, yeah, I mean, I'm just like constantly obsessively consuming new music and, books or movies or whatever. It's really important to me. It's actually like one of the reasons I did I don't know if you saw like I recently released an app that's like an AI
yes.
Sort of
I wanted to talk about this. It was like the digital avatar that people could use. It's
a different. It's like it creates AI. It's like an AI music generative thing that makes
different.
Audio for babies. But part of the reason I did it is like all the baby shit is so I just feel like it's not good art. Like I find it like distressingly obnoxious. And like it was stressing me out because I was like, man, I can't keep like engaging with all this bad art in order to raise my kid because it's going to make me a worse artist. And also I feel like it'll make him worse taste as well. But
that is so on point because you just end up exposing yourself and your kid to this kind of crap for kids.
Some kid stuff is great. Like we were watching Fantasia the other night and I was like, wow, Fantasia is a masterpiece, like an utter masterpiece. Have you seen that movie, the old Disney movie?
Oh yeah, the old Disney, Mickey Mouse, the brooms, the whole thing.
Yeah, right? And did you know Fantasia was made in 1944? And if you watch it from the lens of the war, it like completely changes the whole thing. It's like, yeah, great film. But so I mean, some kids' content is, in my opinion, some of the best content. There's also just a lot of more like the baby stuff, like getting babies to like open their eyes and like all the little cards where you show them the black and white thing to try to get them to learn how to focus. Like I feel like that stuff is just feels weirdly mass produced and not very artistic. And I'm like, man, this stuff could be prettier and more beautiful.
Grimes, if you wanted to uplift that, you would be doing the world such a massive service. Because every parent goes through this where you look up and you're like, okay, like how old's my kid? What am I supposed to be doing? And then like you like go online and like buy some products and you bring them in. And a lot of it is not as human as it could be or should be. Like that, like there is not a lot of heart and soul in a lot of it. So and I know this in part because Evelyn went through some similar processes. And so what she did is she had like a scratch pad of product ideas. And the funny thing is that by the time you turn to the product idea as a mom, like your kid has aged into a need for another product. Yeah. And so you forget about that one. So
I mean, my brother and I had this really funny one that like no one would ever want. But do you know like Brutalist architecture?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so it was called Brutalist Baby. And like everything would just be like cement, like hyper minimalist.
There's some parents that would be into that for sure.
I feel like
Especially in the dystopian world we're in now. They'd be like, oh, this is going to make my kid more rugged.
Maybe it's like bad for the kid though, maybe it's sort of like prison-esque. I don't know. But yeah, I'm like super into brutalist architecture at the moment. And I thought like brutalist baby, like, you know, like just like a square cement crib would be kind of cool.
Well, one of the things you and I were bonding over, which I think we need in the world, is that we need more public art. Like, and one of the fun things about you is like you're continuously like posting kind of visions and images of various structures and sculptures that should or could exist in the world.
Have you been to Burning Man?
I have not. I have many friends who've been. I take it you've been?
Yes, and like the thing that struck me the most about it is it's just like art everywhere, and it's just like it just feels amazing to just be walking through. And there's also no obviously sound restrictions, so it's just like every half a block there's just like a whole new audio experience, and there's just like beautiful art everywhere. And I'm just like, man, if like imagine if our cities had this much, like if you were just allowed to go make something and just put it there without all the bureaucracy and paperwork and like, you know, like even I wanted to like mural my house or like paint it black or something. And like I had to go through the city council and it was like a whole thing. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll just have a normal house. Like, you know, because if it's going to be such a trial, it's going to devalue the neighborhood and whatever, then fine. I won't like have a cool house. But like that's, you can't even like mural your house.
We should be able to mural our houses. In all seriousness, I think public art at a bigger scale would be really transformative, because right now one of the problems with America is that we're cynical about our ability to change and evolve. You know, and that's something around like a level of optimism and appetite for change in a positive way. And I genuinely think that art can produce that in people. Like if you were walking around a neighborhood and then like, I guess in your case, like there's like a house with a giant black mural and you're like, what the heck is that? And then it makes you like think for a second.
He just does. Like I was in Berlin recently to work on the app actually. And like there's just a lot more public art in Berlin. And I was just like, man, this just feels cool. Like it just makes my day a bit better. Like it's just a bit,
it's uplifting. You know? Like you're just more likely to be positive. You're more likely to be kind or generous or give someone the benefit of the doubt when they cut you off or whatever the heck it is. Like, you know, you're just like more positive. To the extent, aside from Burning Man, which I understand, like, you know, I mean, that would be like a singular experience. Are there American cities that actually are like not terrible at this, where you go and you're like, okay, like this place kind of reminds me of Berlin in that way or something like that?
I'm trying to think. I mean, there's cities like Detroit or Baltimore or Montreal where there's just a lot of abandoned stuff. And so there's a lot of like cool sort of illegal spaces where artists are residing. Like I'm less familiar with this now, but more like when I was in my like super whatever underground touring days, and it's not like public, but it is like sick. Like, you know.
Detroit, there are murals everywhere because there are like there are buildings that have fallen into blatant disrepair and no one cares what the heck you do. So there are people going around. Or even
Miami during Art Basel, which I think they paint over the murals during the year. I'm not sure, but like it's sick to just like blocks and blocks of murals. It's just I'm like, this is nice, you know. It's just cool. And then they were kind of having mural painting parties too, where people were painting murals, and there'd just be a bunch of people sitting around like drinking and like chilling, like while the artists were painting the murals. And I was like, I don't know, it's just nice. Like if I had a Sunday afternoon off and I was walking around and I saw someone painting a mural, like I'd probably sit there and watch and hang out. Like nice. It's like a community building vibe exercise.
Yeah, in your case, you'd probably sit there and be like, you know what, you should probably go in this direction over there. And they'd be like, oh yeah, you're right.
No, I don't want to backseat drive. That's the worst when someone's like, if I'm DJing and people come up with requests, I'm like, oh, you know, don't want to backseat drive to other people's art.
You'd be like, just enjoy my vision. Get back to the dance floor. Have you wanted to be athletic? Have you also wanted to be green? Then we've got the product for you, Athletic Greens. What is Athletic Greens? It's a nutritional supplement. What it is it's a mix you put in with water, and all of a sudden, all of these super they've like discovered parts of our brains that they've like activated something really primal and fundamental in us, where you can just watch that stuff and just like almost fall into like a trance. Like
I feel like I was thinking about this the other day. I was talking to my friends the other day and about my friend like was doing some art and she was like, oh, but it's so wholesome and there's no dark, and it was just this really like everything was like pink and stuff, and I was like, I don't know, dude, like I feel like this is like radically wholesome, and it's like being wholesome is actually sort of like, especially in art, is sort of looked down upon, and like you're supposed to be a tortured artist or whatever, but it's like it's actually kind of edgy to be wholesome at this point. And I sort of feel like with K-pop sometimes it's like radically wholesome. Like it's just like nothing about it is abrasive, and like I think that's actually like kind of a good thing. Like I feel like we almost like don't have enough of that. Like it's like nice to just like know I'm gonna like vibe in and engage with something that's just gonna like sound great, it's gonna look great, it's gonna be positive, it's like about love, like there's like dancing, like it's just gonna be executed at a flawless level. It's like I feel like it's sort of a, well, I was gonna say underrated, but clearly not anymore.
Well, it's like the artists are kind of frozen in time at a particular age and stage. You know, if you had to trace the age, you'd say something like 16 to 26. I mean, I don't know if that's actually how old they all are. And then the music's aimed at a particular demo that's, you know, kind of similar, but it's also kind of frozen in time. Like it reminds me of Michael Jackson and then Bruno Mars on top of Michael Jackson, or at least that BTS song that now is on the radio everywhere. Where there, to me, and this betrays, you know, I grew up in the 80s or whatever, but it gives me like this wholesome 80s vibe. And I happen to have been in my teens during the 80s. So it's like transporting back to that point. I think Elon and I are like not, you know, like around the same age. I guess he might have a year or two on me. So I feel like they've really figured, they've like decoded something. They, you know, and I mean, they've now formed this $1 billion creative industry, like powerhouse industry, out of Korea. Did you see the Blackpink documentary that's on Netflix? It's like about the kind of training and formation.
No, there's a Blackpink documentary on Netflix.
Yeah,
wow,
and you really
watch that.
Yeah, like, but so that they're like, it's great and mostly wholesome and the rest of it, but it also shows the way these girls, and they were girls at the time, got identified and recruited and trained at essentially this boot camp that goes 12 hours a day, like 13 out of 14 days, where they get taught how to sing, dance, speak Korean, like generally traffic in this way, and like and it also talks about how girls get weeded out on the regular, like they're there, and then you know, the person that they were brought in with disappears, and like they come up, and they're training for this debut, and they're training for this debut like 5 years later or whatnot. Like they have this archival footage of them showing up as 16-year-olds or whatever it is, and then they're like debuting at 21. You're gonna love it, like, cause you know you're gonna know, a lot of it already.
That is like, you know, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for at this moment in time.
Holy cow, can they dance? Like they can dance like freaking. They're almost like AI. The entire thing, actually, K-pop kind of reminds me of AI.
I mean, I think they're just really well trained. You know, it's kind of like the Beyonce thing or whatever. They're just trained from a young age, so they're just like actually super pro. Like a lot of musicians, like me, or a lot of the people I know, like I was 24 when Grimes kind of took off, you know, and I had put like very little effort into training as an artist, or, you know, I'd never even taken a singing.
Oh, look at this, Grimes. One of the boys just emerged. Look at this.
How's it going?
Christopher and Grimes. Run away, Christopher. Grimes is Daddy's friend. One thing that I know you were inspired by from one of your early albums, which I was a fan of too, was Dune. For you, was Dune the book, the early movie? Like what was it? Because one of your early albums, you were pretending to essentially craft a soundtrack for Dune. You were like, oh, if this was my soundtrack to it.
Well, the tragedy of my life. So like my dream as a child, like I was like, I want to direct the Dune movie. And like even as a child, I actually like I respect a lot of things about the David Lynch movie, but it's not maybe this is sort of like,
heresy.
Not supposed to say this. I don't love the David Lynch movie. I super love the book. Like I read the book when I was really young. Like my dad started reading it to me when I was like 5 or 6. And then I just like got obsessed with it and just like finished it like when I was like 6 or something. So it's this very formative experience to me. But yeah, I think Dune is like phenomenal. I know it's like, I guess, sort of problematic in some ways, or, but I'm actually really excited about the new movie. At first I was like extremely bitter and I was like, fuck Danny Villeneuve and blah, 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 or whatever. But honestly, the casting is great.
You probably run around a lot of these circles. Have you met Denis Villeneuve or any of these guys?
No, I've never met him. I may be saying his name wrong, but I recently...
I just copied you, FYI.
But like weirdly, Timothée Chalamet is actually like a great actor. And like Zendaya, like I don't know, honestly, the casting in Dune is like almost perfect. Like it's probably what I would have done. So, but I'm so sad that it's been postponed. It was like I was like, this is like the light at the end of the tunnel, like of the pandemic, was going to Dune. Like, and I was, going to rent out a theater for all my friends and everyone cosplay as a character from Dune. And I was going to be like a sandworm or an artistic interpretation of a sandworm. But yeah, huge tragedy that film release has been delayed.
What a glorious vision of this film premiere, or the private film premiere. Like I hope this comes to pass, just delayed, because like the you and the sandworm costume would be funny. There'd be a lot of funny things to be had. Are
you a Dune fan?
I'm a Dune fan from the book. The movie didn't do much for me, which is kind of funny. But I loved the world building of the book. And I think that it was very, very hard to make a good movie about that book, given filmmaking capabilities of like the 80s and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, I one of the things that I love about Dune that I think is so interesting is it's like so far in the future, but it's sort of post-technological, like AI is banned, thinking machines are banned. And so like people are doing sort of crazy mind enhancement and stuff to like make up for, the technology bans, which is really, really interesting to me. Especially because like, I do worry we might get into a situation where like governments might start banning technology. Like I think a lot of like the tech boom has been amazing, but also has been quite irresponsible from a safety perspective. And it like, I'm worried if the degree to which, like if the irresponsibility continues, we might get into a place where like we're shutting down technology, like, cause we just,
right now that's like the overreaction that everyone can see coming. Because now there's so many people that do not feel like they're getting included by technology's forward advancement, and there is something happening where technology is consuming more and more of our time, more and more of our kids' time. Are you on TikTok?
On and off. I do find the algorithm to be unsafely addictive, so
bingo. That's where I was going with it.
Yeah. Was I texting you about the Humane Technology Center for Humane? Yeah, we were talking about Tristan Harris.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I think, for example, like I was listening to a podcast with Tristan Harris, and I think it's Tristan, whatever, I'm saying his name wrong.
Tristan, that's right.
And the guy who invented the endless scroll, and it's just like a lot of this stuff is like really addictive, and also sort of like prioritizes hysteria and rage, and also just misinformation. And I think it's like leading to not only like a political crisis but a mental health crisis.
Yes, on counts.
I was reading this thing about how like you go on Twitter or whatever, and your brain is kind of getting the social chemicals, and you're like feel like you're getting the social time, but you're not. Like there's different hormonal releases when you're actually in a room with real people, and it's like you're actually, you feel like you're getting social a social experience, but you're really not. And so it's like people are kind of having the byproducts of being quite isolated. Not to mention just the lack of sleep, like, you know, like these things, like you're on your phone late at night, like it's going to be harder to sleep. Like I think sleeping pill usage is going way up, you know, which leads to less REM sleep, blah, 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 blah. And all of this like feeds into like mental health crisis on top of, you know, all the political stuff and everything. But yeah, it's quite concerning. And, you know, I was thinking the other day, I was talking to some people the other day, about how, you know, it's like, we have global warming and then we have all these global warming scientists or whatever, or like we have pandemic and then we have all these pandemic scientists, but then we have tech and then there isn't like a tech safety community that's super large. Like it's quite small. It's quite
God, the extent that it exists, it's tiny. Like it's Tristan, the people that he has on the podcast. And that's a lot of it.
I think there's like Oxford, there's like some stuff at Oxford, like but it's still, it's like, it's just not, you know, it's interesting that when people consider a career in tech, it's all sort of like making the tech, and none of it is the sort of like the stuff about making
the guardrails. Yeah.
And it's like, especially like when we're getting close to AI and talking about AI, you know, it's like, it's going to be super important to have like as many people working on AI safety as much as actually just building AI.
This is one of the things I said on the trail, Grimes, is that I said, look, some of the most powerful technologists in the world have said to me that they want guardrails on AI because all the incentives right now are to go as fast as possible because we're competing against each other and the Chinese, and one of us is going to do something very regrettable. And so I would say to folks, it's like, look, if Elon is saying this or Sam Altman is saying this, then we really need to listen, because these are not people that, frankly, generally request guardrails. You know, like that. That's not really like.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like, you know, I mean, one of the things that really concerns me about the state of the government right now, you know, at the risk of sounding ageist, is we just have a lot of people in the government who are like very old. They didn't grow up with the internet. They're not super tuned into technology. Like, you know, there's people who are like they're not even checking their email, like in Congress and stuff.
They might never have checked their email in their entire life.
Yeah, like their emails get printed out and they read the paper and then like say, totally. You know, and it's just like, this is like really concerning. Like, I don't think the government across the board has any understanding of technology, and that's part of the reason the Facebook situation is so out of control.
We can all see it's happening, and you don't want to be a jerk to be like, oh, like, you know, the olds don't get this stuff. But the fact is, the average age of a U.S. senator is 62. So, like, how many 62-year-olds you know that like understand like the mechanics of these social media companies? Very few. And there has not been independent guidance on technology-related issues in the U.S. Congress since 1995. You know, 25 years. So they're completely out to lunch on this set of issues. It's corrosive for our democracy. It's corrosive for our mental health. And I've experienced these social media apps in a particular way where I ran for president and tried to use these apps to the best of my ability to make my case and compete and generate a following. And so I've benefited from them tremendously.
Yes. Yep.
But
same. I rely on them completely to run my business.
Yeah. But I can very, very clearly see the downsides for users, where I think that I'm unusually good on them. And even for me, sometimes like I sense myself lapsing into like a Twitter vortex or like you know, like an hour or two will pass. And then I'll look up and be like, oh wait, like I was supposed to do this other thing, you know, and it feels like you're being productive in a particular way and social in a particular way.
Well, so you reward, you know, the way it's been set up, like as Tristan Harris or whatever says, like it's just reward like, ooh, like you hit the heart and go blue, like it, you know, like the scroll, like it's so set up visually to just like make your brain just be like tuned in, and you know, it does feel semi-productive, or, you know, you're like, oh, I'm learning things, but it's like a very shallow comprehension. You know, if you're getting a one sentence on a thing, it's like, ooh, like a fact, like, are you even going to remember that? And there's no deep knowledge there. Which, and I'm not saying this, like, I don't want to say social media is all bad. Social media obviously is great. And, you know, there's been a lot of like political organizing and stuff on it. So, you know, it's definitely like, I'm not just saying like, fuck social media,
but there are excesses, and the excesses are hitting teenage girls particularly hard.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the beauty stuff I think is like concerning.
And I believe that TikTok is the most powerful of these in its own way. Like I just got on TikTok maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and holy cow, is that stuff powerful. Like you get in there and it's hypnotic. You just end up seeing these videos of human beings like dancing.
I mean, humans are trained to want to look at human faces. It's like
consider the amount of portraits versus landscapes, in the lineage of painting. Like we want to look at humans, like we're,
I think it behooves most any adult who wants to understand what's going on with the younger generation to try and spend a few hours on TikTok just to see what the heck the kids are doing. Because it's like another language. It's like another visual and digital language. It's got a different energy and vocabulary, different people. It's like, it's fascinating because like, I've been on Twitter now for a little bit, and all the media and the journalists are on Twitter, and then you go on TikTok and it's like just actual like kids having fun.
Yeah. I think it's great for music.
For music, it would be, I'm sure, like a really useful fire hose. You could just like turn it on and like get stimulation in a particular way.
Well, and it's sort of, I think, a more natural, I mean, maybe there are, the dark forces of major labels pushing certain songs or whatever, but like as far as I'm aware, like I feel like it's just people like dig a song has a cool vibe with a certain movement, and then like that song can kind of take off in a natural, organic way, and I think that's pretty cool. Because music is super over gate kept, and I think TikTok doesn't have that. I don't know, I might be wrong, but
there's a music discovery element, and there are like undiscovered artists who are just making their stuff there, and getting found.
Are you gonna run again, do you think?
I'm almost certainly going to run for something at some point. And I've been pretty public about that. And I dare say it would be more fun the second time than the first time, because we'd start at a higher base. But the problems are just getting bigger and hairier and nastier. And I just want to try and solve them for your son, for my sons, for everyone's kids. Because you and I are in a position where we're actually more able to make a difference in the world than, frankly, like the vast majority of folks. And so, I take that responsibility to heart. So yeah, you're going to see Andrew Yang on some ballot somewhere, some campaign. I've got a couple of visions, but first things first, we have, right now, this might be too nitty gritty for you, but we're heading to Georgia for the Senate races, trying to win the Senate for the Dems.
Yeah.
And then, and then I may end up in the administration trying to tackle some of these social media problems you're talking about.
That would be cool.
Yeah. If that does end up happening and you end up like, I don't know, like working with the Center for Humane Tech people or anything like that, like, and you need any help, definitely hit me up.
I will hit you up. That would be so fun, Grimes. What we do is we'd have this, this message that we need to get out. And then you could help. You could like make some freaking incredible creative for it. We'll hit you up on that for sure. Look at that. You could be like the champion of the humane technology movement or the human tech movement. I would love it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, any way I can help, just let me know.
Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to Yang Speaks and click on notifications so we can let you know every time we have a new episode.
What makes me happy is...
I think I was definitely born happy, and then life happens.
I'm getting a bit emotional here. I feel very happy.
Very happy.
I'm happier now than when I lived in New York, and I got paid probably twice as much in New York as I do here.
our happiness is kind of like quiet happiness, kind of a stillness.
What does it take to be happy? The Nordic countries seem to have it all figured out. Finland and Denmark have consistently topped the United Nations' most prestigious index, the World Happiness Report, in all 6 areas of life satisfaction. How have they cracked the formula? And are the people there really the happiest?
The United Nations just named the happiest place on Earth. It is not Disney World. It's Finland.
In 2019, the World Happiness Report named Finland the happiest country in the world for the 2nd year in a row. Denmark came in 2nd place after claiming the top slot in 2013 and 2016. Year after year, Nordic countries like Norway, Iceland, and Sweden round out the top of the list. Enter Jeffrey Sachs, a professor at Columbia and the co-editor of the World Happiness Report.
What do those countries have? They have a high level of prosperity, to be sure, but they're not the richest countries in the world by any means. The idea is a good balance of life. You don't have to get super rich to be happy, they believe. In fact, if someone's super rich, they look, what's wrong with that person? So they're not societies that are aiming for all of the effort and time to becoming gazillionaires. They're looking for a good balance of life, and the results are extremely positive.
The annual happiness ranking began in 2012, but we can trace measuring happiness back to 1971.
It came in the inspiration of the country of Bhutan, a country in the Himalayas that many people know for its innovation of attempting to measure gross national happiness.
Globally, a standard for measuring success and productivity is gross national product.
Bhutan had the bright idea of trying to measure happiness.
Measuring happiness is a fairly complicated business. First of all, we need to understand what happiness means.
It means the satisfaction with the way one's life is going. It's not primarily a measure of whether one laughed or smiled yesterday, but how one feels about the course of one's life.
Meet Mike Viking, happiness researcher and CEO of the Happiness Research Institute in Denmark.
There's a lot of factors that impact happiness, everything from biology to income levels to the city they live in. But I think the best predictor we see in the data of whether people are happy or not is whether they're satisfied or happy with their relationships. So do we have somebody we can rely on in times of need? Do we have somebody we can share our hopes and worries with?
These 6 categories help account for the differences in life satisfaction around the world. GDP per capita, healthy life expectancy, freedom to make life choices, social support, generosity, and absence of corruption.
On average, richer countries are happier. On average, richer people are happier. But once we get to a certain level of income, additional $100 a month is not going to impact how people feel about their lives. So with money, like with everything else, we see diminishing marginal return.
And I don't know why I'm bringing up this quote because it's extremely corny, but there is a Kanye West song in which he says that having money is not everything, not having it is. And I do think that's true in the sense that when you don't have it, it's all you worry about. And when you do have money, you can actually worry about other stuff. Happiness also seems like this elusive thing. We have 2 words for happiness in Danish. So we have lykke, which is the elusive thing, the thing you experience once every blue moon. And then we have to be glad, like the word glad, which is different because it's more down to earth and you can be glad despite the fact that it's not anything special. It's no special day. Lykke seems like this elusive thing that you can't quite chase. To be glad is more like our mindset. So I feel more like I choose to be glad at times rather than sort of trying to chase happiness, because that seems like it's never going to happen that way.
Maria lives in Helsinki with her husband Duke and her 2-year-old son Luca.
Wow.
Aha, yeah, there it is. There it is, little monster.
Finland is the best place to have kids. When you go give birth, It's almost free. We stayed in the hospital 3 full days. As a family, we had our own family room and we got like meals and support and help and everything. And the bill was about 300 euros in the end. It's basically like living in a hotel.
In Finland, new mothers receive a free baby box jam-packed with 63 items to help with the baby's first year.
You don't have to buy anything for the first 2-3 months. Of course, diapers and stuff like that, but basically. And also, you can actually put your baby to sleep in that box. Our baby actually, Luca, slept in the box for the first month.
Finland, along with the other Nordic countries, offers generous parental leave. Anu Partanen, author of The Nordic Theory of Everything, spent 10 years as a journalist in the US before returning to her home country, Finland. She's also a mother.
In Finland, you get 10 months of paid parental leave, out of which about 4 months is set aside for the mother, and you start it before the baby is born, and then father can keep 9 weeks.
Typically, both parents stay home for the first 3 weeks. They share the rest of the time until the baby is 9 months old. A parent can even stay home until the child is 3 years old and keep his or her job. However, the stipend is much smaller.
Another determinant of well-being is one's sense of personal freedom to make important life choices. Can you shape your life the way you want?
Christina was unhappy at her job in advertising and took an 8-month break.
Social security is also something I think is very important. What I did didn't make me happy, and it didn't let me have that work-life balance that we cherish so much here. And so we have a system that made it possible for me to quit my job and have some thinking time and figure out, what's my next step in life.
Christina received about $2,000 a month from the Danish government while she was unemployed. She is now in school to become a painter. Her tuition is covered, and she receives an educational stipend of about $1,000 a month. Two of the biggest perks of life in Denmark and Finland are free education and free healthcare.
Income taxes are not at all as high in the Nordic countries that Americans tend to think. However, overall, it is completely true that the Nordic countries collect more taxes in general than the United States does.
In Finland and the Nordic countries, there are higher taxes on consumption, like eating in restaurants and buying jeans.
But the thing that I think a lot of Americans forget is that the Nordic people are happy to pay those taxes because they get services in return. Daycare, great public education, it includes your college, tuition free, it includes healthcare. All of those are included in your taxes.
When the news hit that Finland is the happiest country in the world, I think most people kind of reacted to it like, what are they talking about? We don't think of ourselves as very happy because it's dark and gloomy in the winter and whatever.
It's easier for Finns and Danes to shape their lives because the government supports so many of their basic needs.
The American dream is probably more alive in Denmark. The perception of freedom is probably also a little bit different. It seems like in the US, the feeling is you have to be protected from the government and you have to have freedom from the government. I think in Denmark, the sense is that the government protects you.
People trust other people. You leave a bag in a restaurant in Finland, you're pretty sure you're going to make it back and the money is still there.
People even leave babies parked in strollers outside coffee shops while they run errands.
And I think partly the Nordic society cultivates that trust simply by providing basic services for everyone. So there's much less poverty, much less feeling of injustice, inequality, crime. People get the education they need, they can have a job, they can work, they don't have to struggle in life as much.
There isn't super wealth and there's absolutely no super poverty. Everybody participates. It turns out it leads to a wonderful kind of life, and one that is expressed year after year as making these countries the happiest countries in the world.
Monica and Alex are expats who live in Copenhagen with their 2 teenagers. Alex is originally from the UK, and Monica is originally from New York.
What else do you need? Olive oil and balsamic vinegar. Where's the bowling?
We originally came here expecting to stay only 3 years, but it was so good. I've been here 9 now.
It's also safe, and this comes back to the community and the trust. We can let our kids go out,
We do not have to sit here being really worried that are they going to come back? Are they safe where they're going? Do we have to go pick them up? You still worry, of course, but it's just very different. There's still this very strong sense of family, friends, community.
Balance is the formula for happiness. Aristotle had it right when he launched the study of happiness 2,300 years ago.
According to Aristotle's golden mean, good behavior lies between two vices, excess and deficiency.
People who pursue only money and say, I'll be happier the richer I am, turn out to be less happy.
I do think having nice surroundings is a part of happiness, but I also think it needs to be linked with something that sort of resonates with you on a deeper level. Having nice surroundings and having a lot of money and being in a 5-star hotel in Las Vegas doesn't make you happy at all. So I think it needs to have that balance.
Cue the classic Nordic work-life balance. Rich Peruzzi, former New Yorker, has been living in Copenhagen for 7 years.
People stay pretty tight to a 9-to-5 workday, but I do think that we get as much done in a short period of time here as we were doing in longer times working in New York.
One of the comments we actually heard when we first came here was a Dane saying that when you see someone working late, are they doing it because they can't get their work done? Is there something wrong with them versus are they just trying to get ahead and working? There is a sense that yes, work's important and you need to get your work done to a high quality, but you also need to make sure it's balanced appropriately.
Sara Alhupuro is a diplomat and an artist who has shaped her work schedule to make time for her passion.
So I actually need to go to my physical workplace only 3 days a week. So then the rest of the time I can spend here in the middle of nature. When I walk in the forest, I walk there very quietly, paying attention to all the small details and all the colors. Very slowly, and I try to spot all the small details. And I completely lose the track of time. Usually I spend about 5 to 6 hours picking mushrooms.
People don't make as much money in the Nordic countries as they do in the US.
So it's not really about how much you make. You don't have to make as much to get the same quality of life as you would in the United States.
So if we look at the dimension called life satisfaction, we can see that money does matter for well-being and happiness. But I mean, on average, richer countries are happier. On average, richer people are happier. But the mechanism here is being without money is a cause of unhappiness.
Not everyone likes to talk about money either.
In Finland, it's been this kind of rule that you don't talk about money that much. At least like my parents basically wouldn't tell me how much they made, for example, if I would ask as a kid. It would be considered bragging if you would tell about how much you make, etc.
People are happier when they are generous and when they feel that the society that they're in is a generous society. And then we find people want to live in places with decent government. If government is corrupt, if leaders are bizarre or autocratic or corrupt, the society is unhappy.
In 2019, Finland elected the world's youngest serving prime minister, 34-year-old Sanna Marin. Danes are among the happiest people in the world, but they're not necessarily the friendliest. Lars A.P., author of Effing Flink and founder of the movement of the same name, wants to change that.
So Effing Flink is a national movement. Our prime goal is to take Danes that are among the happiest people in the world, but also being the friendliest people in the world. Why are we doing this? Well, because friendliness and positive human interaction means so much to us. Science shows us that. And so we're trying to do that in all sectors and all realms that we can think of.
Finland and Denmark both have populations of less than 6 million people. The US has over 330 million people. The Nordic countries are pretty homogeneous too. Do population size and diversity affect happiness?
A lot of countries with relatively homogeneous population, similarities among people ethnically or in terms of religion and so on, are not very happy. So it's no guarantee. And on the other hand, it's possible to have a lot of diversity and more happiness. Our northern neighbor in the United States, Canada, ranks higher.
Yeah, I think that Finland is probably one of the most homogeneous countries in Europe. Still, we have recently had quite a lot of immigration, but I would say that still it is fairly homogeneous.